these
Sure, the one up in the case about a test to weekly five exploring genres author panel. My name's Alexa Zoller. I'll be the moderator for this event. I am one of the co-founders of Grayslake Authorfest. Let me first extend a heartfelt thanks for myself and my co-founders, Nolly, Francisco, and Z-Lex, and as well as to everyone else involved in making Grayslake Authorfest happen for attending our third annual event. We truly hope you're invited yourselves. We ask that you please silence yourself when during this skill so as not distract the authors while they're speaking. Thank you, and that's for your cooperation. The four authors before you represent writers in a wide variety of genres, and each have their own unique experience in the world of writing. This panel is 45 minutes long, 4 hour days follows. Each of our four panelists will introduce themselves. After that, I have a series of questions I'll be asking. Each author will be asked different questions, so if another author was not asked a question, wishes to add anything, there will be the opportunity to itself. Each author will have up to 3 minutes to answer. We will leave at least 10 minutes for audience members to ask questions at the end of the panel. So introductions. Also, you have 2 minutes each. Please tell us your name, what genres you write, a little bit about your books, and then you have up to 3 minutes. So we'll start with Michelle.
Oh, hi, I'm Michelle Cox.
It's taken.
It's okay. I write a historical fiction mystery series set in the 30s in Chicago. And I also have a standalone novel, which is historical women's fiction. And then I have a new series that I had started. It's a spin-off of the mystery series, but it's not mystery. It's more small town, cozy sort of drama. That's me.
Andy.
Hello, I'm Andy Zach. I've been writing since 2015, and I've got 10 novels and 3 genres. Comical science fiction, young adult, comical science fiction, middle grade, and nonfiction Bible help books. So there's a wide variety there, and I've enjoyed writing each of the things I brought along samples. So young adult, comic science fiction, middle grade science fiction, and then the Bible help book. So got all of them there.
Great.
All right. Hi, my name's Ree Bunch. I do gothic horror, so I'm more on the supernatural, psychological side of life. My works span, they're usually on the more experimental formatting side. I do like incorporating elements of poetry, magical realism, and other literary elements into my horror. I feel like it adds a different depth to it. And I like mostly my work being on the more supernatural occult side of life.
Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen. I publish under J.M. Guilfoyle. I am very eclectic. I have romance, sci-fi, fantasy, contemporary fantasy. I kind of dabble in a lot of things. I also have a science fiction serial out right now. My most recent releases have been an anthology that I self-published and edited with my writing group, The Writing Journey, which I have out. It's Journey to Adventure, so it's all adventure stories. My stories are D&D in that. I have a new collection of fantasy short stories. But I dabble in all kinds of things, and I have a lot of fun with it. I also have written 2 solo RPGs, and I am adapting one of my current short stories from my recent release into a visual novel as well.
Okay. So my first question is going to be for Reed. So talk to me a little bit about what genres are, what purpose does identifying a book genre or genres serve? How do you utilize all different works genre and the benefits there?
So I usually use genre as the skeleton of my work. My advice to really get in is to read your genre, to look at like the different like touchstone like works within your genre that you're working, whether it's romance, whether it's science fiction, fantasy. You have to, good writers are great readers. So you have to really kind of get invested and see what's going on and what other people are really getting into to really understand the tropes and other things that are utilized within your genre's conventions. The other thing is a lot of genre is used for marketing your books. It really helps readers understand what they're kind of getting into. Like you can market yourself as a horror writer, but if you're really leaning heavy into romance, some really diehard horror readers are not going to be into it. They're going to feel like kind of blindsided by your work. So you really want to make sure that you understand the tropes and everything that you're using and how you're displaying it. So that way you're really giving your readers an unexpected twist and not just completely like abandoning conventions that they're like, that they like to read.
Michelle, different genres can sometimes offer books to be longer or shorter than others. What kind of word outrage do you look at landed in writing your books and why?
That's a really good question. I think that generally historical fiction or fantasy tend to be, it's a little bit more acceptable if those books are longer. Otherwise, I try with my mysteries or my standalones to hit like 88 to 90,000 words to try to keep it right in that sweet spot. I will say, though, that my Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, the first books, it hit 94,000 words, but by the seventh book, I was up to like 130,000. But that's because I had so many plot lines and so many characters running, and I just I did my own thing with that. I didn't follow the convention. So, but then when I came out with my standalone novel and my the spin-off series, I really did try to pay more attention to keeping those books thinner and lighter and more marketable, to be honest.
But then you like to add anything to that?
I mean, I think that something to keep in mind is that word count is what it kind of needs to be for a story. Like, you don't have to force something to be a novel, right? A novel minimum is 50,000 words, but let's say you write 45,000 words and your story is complete and it's enough. That doesn't mean you can't put your book out there to sell, right? Like, you can sell novelettes and novellas and stuff, and those are just different words to describe the length of a story. It does not necessarily make your story better or worse to be quote unquote novel length, if that makes sense. So I have several novellas, like my first one, Dark Spell, is like 12,000 words. And that's what it needed to be for the story. And I still sell it on Amazon. There are plenty of romance authors who sell short stories that are only 6,000 or 8,000 words, and they may not sell a physical version until they can compile them into like an anthology of them. But word count does not make your story. Your story is your story. And if it's enough, and if you have other people read it, that's fine. So you don't have to necessarily, I think, stick to a convention.
That's really fun. Yeah. Okay. Jen, so talk to me a little bit. What are tropes and what purpose do they serve with writing stories? And what are some tropes that you feel work best for the genres you write in, and what are some you don't feel don't work as well?
So kind of how we were talking about genre is like really great for classification and marketing. Tropes are kind of when you're getting into the smaller niches of your story. So let's take Harry Potter, because it's a huge example. People know you've got Harry, who is a chosen one, right? So that is a trope. That is a character that, and like kind of like almost a storyline that you see that is common. And you can pick out different stories that have that same trope in it. And there's lots of tropes. A lot of stories have more than one trope. So it's, have you guys seen those social media ads where they're like, just like a poster size and it's just got different tropes and arrows pointing to your book cover? Like, it's a great way to also market your books, because it helps guide reader expectations. So like, I'm reading Harry Potter, I know that it's this chosen one story. Yeah, technically I think even like the first Star Wars series with Luke, he was a very chosen one. The Matrix, Neo is a chosen one. So for me personally, I tend towards like a like found family trope. That's one of my favorite tropes. I tend to watch those shows. You can see these things in TV shows. You can see them in movies, and you probably go through like what you guys watch usually and see them coming up over and over again, because they're probably something that you tend towards. What I feel don't fit well. I mean, it's hard for me because I do write so many different things within fantasy, maybe. There's a lot of things that mix with it. So it's hard for me to find tropes that don't necessarily work, because you'll have so many crossovers of like romantasy and horror and even some like science fiction style elements or general fiction. I would say that probably for other authors that are more constricted, like historical romance or horror, you're going to have more tropes that don't fit. So for me, I don't have that problem.
Anyone else want to add to that?
So I do see what you're saying with the tropes that don't fit. But I feel like the tropes that don't fit give me an opportunity to maybe try to reinvent a little bit as I'm working through them. Like one of the notions that I like to work with or I'm trying to figure out more is the notion of the final girl. Because traditionally the final girl is a very big popular trope in horror. It's like one of our hallmark moments. But the thing that I struggle with sometimes is that it's done in a very moralistic sort of way. Like the girl survived because she fit into a very niche sort of setting. And I like to try to expand upon that and try to make it a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more eclectic. So that way it fits more into our changing dynamics as a society.
Okay. Andy, how do you feel writing for youth is different than writing for like older teens or adults? What's important to keep in mind in writing for kids, and how does it impact your writing process?
Excellent. Yeah, because I have the classic. I wrote this one first as for young adults and adults. Just thinking of adults when I wrote it. So, but most people say it's fits for young adults. But so that's ended up how I marketed it as 12 and up, young adults. And then I specifically chose to go for middle school market. So I said, well, what grades do I want to cover? So I thought, well, middle school isn't enough. So I want to go down to people always want to read ahead of their grade level. So I aimed for fourth grade. So I set my mind back to when I was in fourth grade. I read a lot in fourth grade, so that's not a problem to imagine a fourth grader reading a lot. So I tried to write it kind of like as I like to read in fourth grade.
Yes.
And so I simplified the plot. That's one of the things I did because I love complicated plots. So I have dozens of characters. That's probably one of my weaknesses. I always have side characters up to all kinds of stuff. But I have fewer characters in here, and I have fewer subplots. So I have basically a main plot where I follow it through from beginning to end as they learn about becoming superheroes and how they're going to hide it and how they're going to live as seventh graders fighting crime. And so, in a lot of it, I found in Secret Supers, I really gravitated toward writing kind of wish fulfillment. And so I have a scene where they all four of them discover they all float flying like superheroes to the crime scene. And they just love it. And the one character is able to cast an invisibility shield. And she loves that. So they're all getting into being superheroes themselves. So that's part of the identification, wish fulfillment, the kind of thing you want to have. That's how we did.
Jen, striking fantasy requires very simple development in addition to characters to character and plot creation. What's your process for building the world your characters inhabit?
All right. I've actually done a lot of workshops on this. So there's a couple of things. One, I have the tendency, so I started my writing career in fan fiction, which some people will talk about. And fan fiction is great because if you're starting writing, you're not necessarily creating your own characters and world. And so that's great for learning how to write plot. Because of that, what I would tend to do is for my original works, there would be some element in my fan fiction that I thought was really, really cool. And I decide I want to build my own story around it that's not fan fiction and create my own world. So usually I have started somewhere. So for example, my current Shutdown Syntax sci-fi serial is based off of my Detective Pikachu fanfic. Which is really, it's also a PI kind of police procedural story. But now I'm having to expand the world, right? Because I don't have Pokemon, because that's obviously copyrighted. So I had to figure out a different thing. So I veered towards AI. The same thing with a couple of my other, my Wings of Destiny series. That started off as a How to Train Your Dragon fanfic, and I decided I wanted to build it out more, and so I still have dragons, and it's somewhat similar in feel, but I decided I wanted to have fae. I wanted to create a world. So what do? So I take the concept, right, and I start building it out slowly. I tend towards writing first drafts very light, so I don't actually do a lot of my world building at first. I will tend to start writing my story, and I will figure out what elements of world building I need. And this is more towards the soft world building setup as opposed to hard world building, like your J.R. Tolkien, who will create whole languages in Elvish, right? Like the whole Elvish language is very, very thorough. I think he's got like a whole dictionary and everything. You don't have that. So I will write my story and I will figure out what elements I need. And then from there, let's say I need a country. Then I start building out my country. I start building out my political system, but I also build it out based on what my story needs first. Same thing with races. So I tend towards, I will write my story first, and then I start seeing what I need. And I use Scrivener, so I'll have things on the side, and I'll just start building out my world. I'll start building out my places. I'll start making maps as I'm writing my first draft. And then things will change, because things always change. But then I have a framework there of what I know I need, and that I can keep building on, if that makes sense. Should that answer the question? Yeah.
Does anybody want to add it to that?
Great explanation. I told you, I've done this before.
I could add something. Says I tend to do exactly opposite of you. I thought it helpful to do opposite things. I did write some fan fiction at first, so that was off Robert Jordan's series. So
I always love when fan fiction brings people together.
yeah, that was. But that I didn't use it for any of my books. So I didn't want to create a new world for my zombie adventure, so I just took our world as it was when I was writing it in 2015. So I just took the world as it was, added zombie turkeys, and saw what would happen.
I mean, I would argue, though, that still takes some world building, right? Because you're figuring out what place in our real world you have to do. You have to figure out the setting, and that still requires research and figuring out what you need to describe it.
But I'm still lazy.
No.
I go and I go into all the places I've been and all the places I know, and that's what I write about. So I've been living in Peoria now for 37 years, and so I start the zombie turkeys start next to Peoria, and they march up through the Illinois Valley to Chicago, landing there on Thanksgiving and during the football game. So that's it all kind of fell together with that, and it was kind of fun. Kind of fun seeing what will happen to our society if we have added zombie turkeys. And the other book, my fantasy book, I did the same thing. Take our society, add magic where everyone is able to cast spells. And
but the magic still required you to do some world building around that magic system.
Yeah, I had to think
you have to understand how that magic system.
I understood it, but nobody else did. So I kept it hidden from the characters and the readers. So that kind of makes it fun.
Okay. So Andy, why is it important for authors to include diverse characters, be they racially diverse, neurodiverse, as a way to say the member of that LGBTQ plus community or diverse any other way in all genres? How do you include that diversity in your book?
Yeah, that's the first goal in any character development, at least to me, is the characters have to be realistic. You have to someone that you can really see and imagine happening and meeting. So that's what I want to have. So I meet black people, I meet white people, I meet Native Americans, I meet people of Middle Eastern extraction, of all male and female, all genders, and I have all of those characters playing into my books, and they interact with each other. And I like taking some traits that are stereotypical, say a stereotypical mother-in-law. I have an undead mother-in-law series, so I take a stereotypical mother-in-law and I make her very kindly and gentle, and then she loses temper. So I mix the tropes together there, and then she's married to someone who's very shy and retiring accountant, but he's also an ex-football player. So I try to think opposites. I put them both into the same character, and that makes the characters more realistic. And even my good characters, I try to have them have some kind of weakness of some kind. My main character for Zombie Turkeys is just a very unambitious, unaccomplished high school graduate, and he's kind of like a everyman. You talk about tropes, he's an everyman, and you would never think of him as a hero, but because of the zombie turkey plague, he ends up becoming the hero of the book. And I do that more than once. So I take my villain in my dead mother-in-law, make him despicable, of course, completely without morals, but he also loves his pet chipmunks. His very first cyborg animals were chipmunks, and he takes good care of them and is affectionate toward them. So that was, and he also is very good at planning, anticipating problems as they come up. So then I try to put a realistic combination of traits together.
Okay. Ree, How do you keep the horror in your books becoming your characters forming less kind of less scary about it? Is there a balance you try to strike between the horror aspects and quote unquote preview? So what's that balance?
So I practice it a lot, and I also read and see how other people do it, and also sometimes like seeing a visual representation like through horror movies and like other sort of horror content really kind of helps me stand the mechanics of a good scare. I also like to include comedy because horror and comedy are next door neighbors. So it's really easy to kind of like utilize some like setups that you would see in comedy and be able to like kind of twist them a little bit to kind of enhance the scare and like the emotional effect. And sometimes having some of your horror beats be an unexpected moment of comedic relief almost makes the landing of the actual big scare that much worse. Because you don't really know, like kind of knocks you off your guard a little bit. So it takes a little bit of finesse and really kind of digging down to see what your beats are and what you're trying to build up to. But I think really kind of being invested in your genre so that way you really get into the mechanics of it really helps.
Yeah, I think it also comes up a lot in other things. Like if you have action and adventure, right? Like your characters are not going to be nonstop running. They're not going to be nonstop fighting. There has to be a break in there somewhere. Otherwise, they're just going to collapse and die. Let's be honest, right? Like it's about pacing in that case.
Yeah.
Right. The show. How do you go about creating a mystery for your characters to solve? What kind of things do you have to take into account to allow your readers to try to solve a mystery alongside the characters?
Well, the first few books of the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, of course, were murders. But then after a while, you're like, well, there has to be some other mystery that they're solving. So sometimes the mystery that I come up with, the thing that happens that they're trying to solve, relates to what is going on with the characters as the books progress. But sometimes it's like book 6, for example, is a spying eye. And I knew that they were going to go back to Europe for that one. So I thought, okay, what kind of mystery could they be solving that's not a murder in 1930s Europe? And I'm like, what about art theft? So then I started doing a bunch of research on famous art thefts in Europe in the 30s. And the Ghent altarpiece came up. And so I did a deep dive into that. That piece has never been found. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect mystery for my characters to solve. So sometimes, and then like the last book of the series, I wanted it to be the big grand finale. I wanted it to be sort of an homage to Agatha Christie. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be in a manor house where there's lots of guests, a murder happens, and then everybody's a suspect. So sometimes it's just me wanting something besides a murder, and sometimes it's what the character progression requires. And as far as having the readers come along with you to trying to solve it, that's, it is a very difficult thing to do because you want to give them some red herrings, but sometimes you don't want to make it too obvious, and that's really hard to do. And I also try to put in some twists that you're not expecting, but if every book has a twist, then your readers are going to start expecting a twist. So it's kind of a fine line.
The M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Like,
yeah. Okay. So this next question we're going to ask everybody. So we're going to start with, for your subject, Jen. What's the most important piece of advice you think aspiring authors should hear? What makes it so important?
I'm going to say two things. One is writing. I know a lot of authors in my writing group that study the art of writing and do a lot of research on how to write a novel, but don't necessarily write a ton. You learn more by actually writing. I mean, even if you don't have somebody else read it, beta readers is always going to be the secondary after writing it. The more you write, the more comfortable you will feel with writing. And the more you will understand as you read it back yourself, if the story makes sense. And the second thing I would honestly say is, I found a great support with my writing group. Some libraries, and you can just find us online. I know that Andy is also part of a writers group. If you're interested in my writing group, I have the link at my table. I didn't bring it with me. But having a writers group that has supports that they can teach you things. We do monthly free workshops. We do all kinds of things so that you can learn more things about either genres or the craft of writing or editing or whatever. I think that that's like a really great resource, especially if it's free. I feel bad for like the writers groups where you have to pay for it and there's maybe not a lot of things out there. So it is something to be wary of. But I think those are like the two biggest pieces of advice.
Amy,
Yes.
you.
All right, advice. Can't say anything wrong about writing. I agree. And with me, writing, when I retired, I wanted not to be lazy. So I just set a schedule to write every day. So I wrote and I'm best in the morning. So I write in the morning. I had a schedule 9 or 10 o'clock every morning, start writing. And that was, I would recommend that to have a schedule, a daily schedule, and treat it like a job. You've got to write every day as part of your job. And then the other part we've also mentioned was reading a lot, reading the genre in which you're writing, understanding how it's written. Why do you like the books you like? What is good about that? And try and copy what you can, and learn what you can about that. So before I started writing, thousands of books.
Michelle, for these.
Yeah, I would reiterate that you have to. For me, I write every single day, and I would advise that you don't always feel like when you get out of bed in the morning writing, but it's kind of like exercise. It's like nobody jumps out of bed and says, "Yeah, I can't wait to exercise." It's the same with writing. Some days you just don't feel like it, but you have to make yourself do it. And I think that having that discipline eventually really, really helps you. I take a walk the night before, and I use that time to think about what the next day's chapter is going to be, and that really helps a lot. So in terms of like original advice, I would say to, write every day. But then secondly, if you can figure out why you're writing ahead of time, that's going to save you a lot of time and heartache and money. If you're writing just because you want to write the book of your heart and you just feel like getting a book out there, that's a different thing than if you're trying to make this a career. Because if you're writing the book of your heart, you kind of can just do what you want to do. But if you're trying to do this as a career, it's a different strategy. And then once you write the book, you think, oh, yay, I finished the book. Then you have to get it published. And then once you get it published, then you're at the bottom of another mountain called marketing. And that's really gigantic. So yeah, if you can figure that out ahead of time, it changes. When I first wrote my very first book, which never got published, it wasn't to get it published. It wasn't to sell. It wasn't to have a career. I just wanted to see if I could sit in a chair long enough to write a book. And it took me a year to do it. I did it. And I gave it to my friends and family. And they're like, oh, this is really good. Why don't you try to get it published? I'm like, well, I didn't really write it for that reason. And they're like, no, you should. And that started me on that whole journey. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you think you're in one camp and then it sort of morphs into the other. Obviously, that's okay. But if you can kind of keep that in the front of your mind, it helps.
To me, what about you?
I guess mine's probably a little bit later on down the line of it, not necessarily like sitting down to like begin the writing aspect of it. But really when it comes to writing is done in solitary, but the act of reading and sharing is a community event. And sometimes that can probably be the most intimidating part for a lot of new authors is just like, you wrote the book, now what? So I would say just do it even if you're afraid. Sometimes that fear is just anxiety of like a version of yourself that you haven't met yet. So it's really important to like do it even though you're afraid, even if it's not like 100% perfect. Perfect often is the enemy of progress. So just go out there and do it anyways.
Actually, that's how fan fiction helped me a lot, is that I would publish, I never thought I would put my fan fiction up on the internet. And then I put some of my fanfic up on AO3 and I would get kudos and comments and likes.
And that is publishing. That is still publishing. You know, obviously I'm not making money, but that got me over that hump of then I could actually publish a real book on Amazon for people to buy, you know. It makes it less scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.